industry, in digital advertising industry, that ad fraud is like a harmless crime, that no one gets hurt. But that's not what I've seen just through my own ad networks. And so if the industry doesn't do anything to change it, which they really haven't, you're just inviting the government to come in and regulate the industry. The cost every year is at least $8 billion, but this is an older presentation, obviously, by 2020. So ad fraud probably now is at least $40–50 billion a year, and that's a conservative estimate. And that money could be going to content creators. It could help fund independent journalism. There's a lot of good that, you know, is going to the wrong place. So how do we solve this problem? We took the approach of building a peer-to-peer system on top of Ethereum. So we had several different smart contracts that would interoperate together and consist of different types of systems that would protect media spend and give media creators more money. And so at a high level, how many of you guys are familiar with how blockchains work? Roughly. It's great. 4 years ago, no hands would go up. But essentially, we were utilizing the ad chain tracking pixel that would be riding along the supply chain with the advertising campaign, and we'd be tracking data. And so we'd be collecting as much data as we could and storing it on the ad chain blockchain, which is just a series of smart contracts on Ethereum. So all of it was encrypted, stored, and then made available to the relevant parties through our dashboards, which I'll show you in a sec. And so really what we are looking to do is bring a lot of the intrinsic value of distributed ledger technologies like security, open source, like it's open to everyone, censorship proof, and bring that to the industry of advertising, which didn't have any of that. And to also be able to verify and hold, you know, bad actors accountable. In order to gain any level of adoption, because advertisers and the whole industry wouldn't just jump into Ethereum and get like a wallet and start transacting in that way, because they're kind of dinosaurs in a sense. So we had to integrate with existing advertising systems, like the major systems that are powering the majority of buying today. And that's through our tracking pixel and scripting. So that's how they would just enter into the ad chain ecosystem. And when we were onboarding publishers to the ad chain ecosystem, we had to incentivize them. So we did that in a few different ways. And one thing that came out of this project was called a token curated registry. And the ad chain registry was a global whitelist of publisher domains or app domains that were vetted out by, you know, fraud specialists and token holders. And they would be curated out of the registry if they were known to have significant ad fraud on the site. And so we created a standard that the industry started to work with. And we worked with the Advertising Bureau, which is the governing body responsible for governing advertising. And they started to work with us on the standard as well. So we started to get some serious traction. And not only did it get traction within the industry, but it got a lot of traction in the crypto space, where a lot of the Ethereum projects started to utilize TCRs in a number of different ways. And, you know, I guess I'll show you. So one example was Doge on Trial, where it was a token curated registry of pictures. And so random users could upload a picture, and then other token holders and users would vote out anything that wasn't a Doge. So that, again, we open sourced our entire platform. And so TCRs were forked from our GitHub and utilized in a lot of different ways. Another one was a meme factory that launched from TCRs. So they took some of our smart contracts and just repurposed it for other reasons. And so this one was a TCR of memes that would allow meme creators to essentially track the provenance of the meme and get paid. And so that gets into royalties. And this was probably also the precursor to NFTs, because this was several years ago. So getting into the ad chain registry, we incentivize publishers to join the registry by essentially paying them. And so we paid them an ad token to apply their domain. And so we started populating the registry. And so when we launched, we had all of the publisher networks and domains that we were already advertising with join. And then we got to see random domains from around the world join as well. So it was pretty cool. So this is a look at just the domains. And what this is showing essentially is you apply and you get accepted. And if with the ad chain auditing portal, which I'll get into, but the tracking pixel would collect the data. It'd be analyzed by the industry of safety vendors. And then if you have a quality score above a certain percent, you remain in the registry. If you don't do what it takes to maintain a quality traffic score, you'd be voted out of this registry, which is significant because as a publisher, if you're out of this registry, you're no longer available to receive advertising campaign dollars from all of the brand advertisements that we were running in the ad chain network. And so the incentive model was, you want to be in this registry because we're buying tens of millions of dollars in media, and you won't be able as a publisher to receive that payment unless you're in this registry. And so it's kind of just this aligned incentive model that we were going for. And the governance model was a technical protocol that was also votable. So there were certain parameters within the ad chain protocol that you could vote on, depending on your use case and what would be relevant to you. So we try to keep it as open and as specifically relevant as possible, which was challenging because it's hard to make everyone happy. So here's an example of the same supply chain, but with the ad chain pixel and our data collection methodology, we were able to provide transparency throughout the entire supply chain to the advertisers. And so all of that data was also available to the accredited and verified members within the supply chain through NFTs. So you have to have a token as a member to be in this supply chain. So that was just kind of a novel way, because it wasn't even called an NFT. It was just an ERC 721. It was just a smart contract that behaved differently than an ERC 20. And so utilizing NFTs, we were able to ensure that every participant within the digital advertising supply chain is verifiable. And then bad actors would be essentially kicked out. All the data went to our ad chain auditing portal. And so this was made available to the media buyer and the auditors of the ad chain network. And so this would show how many impressions were served of the campaign, the percentage of bot traffic detected by a global network of auditors. And they were also incentivized to provide their expertise in ad token. So how exactly does it eliminate fraud? Well, you remove the bad actors. You have verified, members of the ad chain network that follow the guidelines of best practices in terms of monitoring traffic and cleaning up, networks that are sending fraud. And that was essentially our pitch to the entire industry. I went to DC, I presented all over the world. I even went to Brussels to talk about a potential solution to advertising fraud, which is a global problem. And the response was mixed. It's hard to change the behavior of an entrenched industry that doesn't think they have a problem and that they get paid for ad fraud. And so it's been very challenging. But I'm going to continue to work on it. So thanks, guys. I know that was a lot. So let me know if you have questions.
So it seems like a lot of the cleanup is on like the supply side, right? Platforms serving ads. What about the demand side, right? On like Twitch and YouTube or places where content creators are getting paid for the ads they serve directly, so they're incentivized to, direct bot traffic to their own, videos and
right.
views.
Well, so they're incentivized to monitor the traffic coming into their demand side systems. They also need to be aware of what advertisers are buying with them, because a lot of buyers, they have a platform that just allows anyone with money that wants to spend, on media to just come in and we'll take your money. But the advertiser could be doing something nefarious. It could be trying to manipulate, the audience. It could be serving malware. There's tons of stuff that happen on the demand side as well. On the supply side, it's pretty straightforward. Just inflate numbers. We have more users than we really have. We get more money for that. We even raise VC funds for having fake users. Uber is a great example. But yeah, it's crazy. So like publisher networks will encourage ad fraud because they get more money, and then they get bought out by larger networks all the time, even though 80% of their network is fraud. I remember when I was running VidRoll, which is a video advertising network, I was doing 15% of this company's traffic called LiveRail, and LiveRail got acquired by Facebook for $500 million. And I knew that all that traffic was garbage, but they didn't care. So that was a fun meeting. Essentially, there was anyone involved in the supply chain of a campaign, they get paid out in some shape or form. So everyone, to a degree, has a responsibility. They need to know what's going through their network, like what ad creative is being served, and also just being honest. So that was interesting.
Yeah. So you mentioned publishers. I guess two-part question. So one, could you describe what a publisher is? And you mentioned there's incentives and disincentives for them to potentially participate in this program.
So, we're all publishers in a way. Anytime we post something, we create content. There's so much content being created. It's insane right now. But a publisher in the traditional sense for advertising is any content creator that wishes to monetize their website or their application by serving ads to their users. And so a publisher in our network was, ESPN, their, content creator, publisher. We had mobile apps. They would be considered a publisher. So any content in the digital space that's being monetized by ads would be considered a publisher.
How do they police the traffic going to them?
Well, they have access to free tools. So they would have access to our auditing system as well. And through it's a JavaScript tracking pixel, and we would collect at least 300 data points on every single unique advertising impression. And so we would give them all the data they would need to know what is the quality of your traffic. So it's not a live version, but it's a screenshot of the dashboard where they would have in real time, essentially the health of their publisher network.
But how do they control swarms of botnets sending them garbage traffic?
You can identify the source of the fraudulent traffic, and then they have to go to that traffic supplier and say, stop sending us headless browser traffic, stop sending us phone farms in India where they have walls of iPhones, but they don't move. So we would say, hey, this phone hasn't moved in 2 years. Probably don't want to serve ads on it. Or, hey, this phone doesn't have the necessary processing card to render video on this device. Probably shouldn't serve video ads to it. They just have to look. So I have a much more in-depth presentation on auditing. So if you want to get into the nitty-gritty, we can do that.
So I guess their only incentive is from the publisher standpoint, because the more impressions they get, the more ads they can sell, the more revenue they get.
So our hope was to provide a different incentive model where they could earn crypto. by following the rules or just being a good actor in this peer-to-peer ad ecosystem. So we decentralized ad servers. So we provided all the tools. We provided a transparent protocol between the peer-to-peer ad servers. We provided a global registry to allow for discoverability of quality publisher domains and apps for advertisers to bid on. And then we opened this up to all the experts of advertising fraud by saying, here's all the data. We would make some of it private to protect, any advantages that publishers might have against other, publishers to win more campaigns. But it was what we thought the best approach.
So I guess presumably the publishers could then ask for
more money
on fewer ads because they were targeted to
correct
people and not fraudulent.
Yeah, if we say, hey, there's 60% of your network is just going to go away, and you're just going to have to accept that, and you're going to have to demand more money for your audience because they're actually human, they're real people. And that was also another hard pill for them to digest because they were just making so much money. And then here we come in with ad chain audits, so we say half of it's fake. They didn't like that. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. If you had to build this again, starting today from a clean slate, what blockchain would you use?
I would have raised more money. So I'll answer your question, but just to touch on the ICO that we conducted in 2017, because that was an experience in itself. I think Perkins Coie is here somewhere. They worked with a lot of the big ICOs. Like they were kind of like the firm behind some of the big ones. But within a matter of seconds, we had $110 million worth of ETH in our wallet, in our smart contract. And it was like refreshing the page when we launched. It was nuts. We returned 100 million because we capped it, but it was just raising $110 million as a startup like that. And that was in 2017. So I don't think the industry fully understood the potential of, raising funds, crowdsourcing, like the new version of crowdsourcing. So that was interesting. I guess to answer your question, Ethereum is battle tested. It's moving obviously to proof of stake. It's interesting how things are changing. There's obviously all new competitors out there. I think I would have to do a lot more research and catch up. I took a mental hiatus, so I've been fishing a lot. But now that I'm back, thank you, Sean. Where's Sean? Thanks for inviting me to speak and getting me back into the public eye. We'll see how this goes. But I would need to do a lot more research. I think something built in Rust, something that's super fast, scalable, secure.
Super fast in Rust, so Solana basically.
Maybe.
No, but I do have a question for you about what triggers something on the blockchain in this. Obviously, you're not creating a transaction every time there's an impression or
Correct.
Every 1,000 impressions. So
yes.
What triggers that?
So some of the intellectual property that we had within AdChain, other than everything, but most of it was open source, was our proprietary network of state channels. So we created state channels, and that's how we served ads in the decentralized ad servers, and we collected data. We hashed it into our state channel network, and then we rolled that up to Ethereum. So at the start of a campaign, we hit the mainnet. So there's a transaction there. And then when we ended the campaign, we closed out the state channels, the network of state channels, and then we interacted with Ethereum. That was in the second transaction. So per campaign, there were 2 transactions, and we could justify the cost of the gas fees doing it that way. And then we didn't jeopardize the integrity of the data with state channels, which was a second layer on Ethereum. Yeah, ZK Snarks. Yeah. It was nuts. It was really cool because we were doing it and they didn't have a name for it. So yeah, ZK Snarks are very way above my understanding. I'm not a mathematician or a cryptographer, but it's a way to prove something is true without having access to all of the variables within the formula. So it's like 1 + 1 is 2, and you would be able to prove it using a ZK snark without knowing there's 2 1s in the formula or the equation. So It's heavy on computation though, and that was a barrier. So we used state channels, which is essentially like Merkle trees, which is a whole other thing. But yeah, so the Merkle trees were just a way for us to say, here's a campaign with X number of impressions. So if I go to the auditing dash, so if we served 80,000 impressions or 81 million for this advertiser, we handled quite a bit of budget and campaigns for some of our clients. STX was a big user of the system. We did all of the auditing for their digital campaigns to promote new movies. So that was fun. But we would, hash it, roll it up, and then be able to access it through different dashboards. And then the Merkle tree would just prove the provenance of the impression and the data behind it. So if you wanted to drill down to like one impression event and look at the data behind it, you could essentially look at it by rolling up that Merkle tree and then seeing this is the origin impression, and then here's all the data behind it. And that was a way for us to make sure that it was cryptographically secure and not tampered with in any way, because we wanted to 100% provide assurances to our clients that this data hasn't been modified in any way, and here's how we can prove that. Any other questions? All right, you guys having fun? Tree fort? Yeah? All right, good. Thank you.